Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Soccer for Us. I'm Bart, and on this episode we are talking about the 23 players who are going to be taking on Trinidad and Tobago in the upcoming Concacaf Nations League Quarterfinal / Copa America Qualification. 23 guys, one coach, all representing the U.S. And to talk about this, I have my friend and the foremost proponent of bringing back sashes to U.S. soccer kits a la the Pan Am and Olympic Games. It's Thomas, a.k.a. U.S. Keeper.
Good evening. Yeah, U.S. is teasing us a little bit, so we'll see what they come out with some of these kits. They're doing a lot of teasing and taunting lately on some social media platforms. So
they have been,
yeah, for several areas where we're playing and in kits. So they're definitely listening. So hello, U.S. Soccer.
We're gonna tag them in this post just so that they realize that we need to have the sash back in the kit. Also joining us tonight, a man who is so excited that the CONCACAF Nations League is coming to the greater Dallas Metro. It is Caleb, a.k.a. USMNT Corner. That announced today, by the way, CONCACAF Nations League Finals will be at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. That's super awesome, right?
Yeah, I got to start planning my trip now to get all of it.
Go to Dallas.
Yeah, that's I'm waiting. I'm waiting for Mercedes-Benz to announce that they're going to go all grass, and then maybe we can start having some fun things happen here.
Too bad it's not Dallas, Georgia, right? That's where they should be placed. That would be way closer.
My backyard is super close and convenient for me.
All right. Well, like I said, we're here to talk about the now 23 player roster for the U.S. men's national team coming up for these friendlies against Trinidad and Tobago. Excuse me, not friendlies. Wow. These actual competitive matches against Trinidad and Tobago. But first, let's just break down what actually is at stake for these matches. So I mentioned CONCACAF Nations League, which has been something that the U.S. has won twice. We've dominated this, but they decided to switch things up on us. So now, instead of the traditional kind of like multi-group league format, they went to two groups, not including the U.S., Mexico, Costa Rica, or Canada, because they automatically qualified to the quarterfinals. Trinidad finished second in their group. The quarterfinal basically now serves as a qualifier for Copa America. So that's kind of what we're playing for, is not only being able to advance from the quarterfinals to the Nations League Finals in March in Dallas, like I just said, but also basically an automatic spot for Copa America. Thomas, we're not an automatic qualifier, even though they're the host, but CONCACAF does get 6 teams in Copa America, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, it's, the success of the 2016 Centenario was financially and, was huge for Copa America. And that's part of the reason they're coming back, I think. I'm hoping this becomes a regular appearance opportunity for the CONCACAF and CONMEBOL to work together, because I think there's a good opportunity. I would like to see maybe some other teams from other confederations come into just to make the competition a little bit better. Maybe the top 3 or 4 but I think it's a huge thing to be part of, and they really haven't been part of that many, considering how many they've had. This is what, the 5th one, I think. Yeah, that the United States has participated in. So
something like that.
Yeah, I think it's the 5th. So they finished 4th twice, I think it's awesome. It's exciting. I think it's good exposure for the World Cup and a good exposure for these players to play at a higher level.
Also important to note that we've been talking about the CONCACAF W Gold Cup. That includes 4 CONMEBOL teams. So there does seem to be some sort of partnership. Hopefully it's more than just this one edition, but a partnership going forward. And I'm with you, Thomas. I think it actually benefits both sides, both CONCACAF and CONMEBOL, that you just get different competition. But also, as I mentioned, this is the quarterfinal of the Nations League, a tournament that we've won twice. Caleb, we have been the kings of this particular tournament. But this one is a very tight turnaround. We just won it back in June. We're playing again. But I think what I like about this, and I would like to hear your thoughts, is there's no question that U.S. soccer, Mexico, Canada, all of those, the big ones, they prioritize this tournament to bring in their best talent that they can when available. They've been prioritizing this tournament. And I think that's why I almost look at it as a bigger win right now than I would a Gold Cup. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think you have to. I mean, and it would be the other way around if all the teams started bringing their A teams to the Gold Cup, then we would hold that in higher esteem, right? I think the fact that it's CONCACAF's version of the Euros, basically. Like it's the one that they're putting all their attention into, and the big boys are the ones being brought up. So yeah, it's the biggest one, and it feels like, casuals would probably think that the Nations League is just all year round, because it's like we're always playing in the Concacaf Nations League. And is it good? I would say I would err on the side of, or lean on the side of, yes, it's good, because regardless of how often and frequent and all that kind of stuff, I mean, it's their games that matter, right? We talk about, I mean, you even with the slip of friendlies earlier, we play so many. We play so many friendlies, especially on the women's side. But having games that matter, it's nice. And look, whether it's Nations League, Gold Cup, like, I don't care. It's a trophy to play for, and the big boys are playing. They're coming. I'm excited.
Well, it's interesting that we do talk about this, because I agree that we prioritize it so it's more interesting, it's more fun, and I'm excited for it. But Thomas, if you remember back in 2018 when CONCACAF announced the Nations League, the original final was supposed to be in March of 2020, right? Obviously, things happened in 2020, pushed it back to June 2021, and then they did the next edition in June of 2023. This format, they started the other leagues back in September and then played some in October, and now we're in November. The final in March 2024. This is supposed to get Nations League back on its calendar, playing the finals in March 2024, because we've had that issue where we've had a Nations League and a Gold Cup in the same summer. So CONCACAF, I'm hopeful, Thomas, that they keep this in the even year in March. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's nice. I think logistics for this make it kind of interesting, because if it lines up that way, you'll be playing your A team, in these matches during the windows, which is great. But it also gives you an opportunity to still consider playing an A team at one of the Gold Cups, which I still think you need to do, for all of CONCACAF. And so, and I think we'll see that in the next window. If the rumored expanded Gold Cup is going to happen, you'll definitely see your A squad in that window as well. So it has to line up like that, or we're really going to have a tough time, getting, releasing players and having the time needed to maybe, have longer camps in that June window, because I think that's where we have an opportunity to have a longer camp potentially with, with a team either, competing in, Copa America, this summer, or the Gold Cup.
Well, let's see if CONCACAF actually sticks to their planning. We know that they are fantastically gifted at changing on the fly. Let's just put it that way. They love to change their plans. But let's talk about this roster. So like I said, 23 players. There was 24 called in. Unfortunately, one had to back out. So now we're down to 23. Goalkeepers, 3 of them. Ethan Horvath from Nottingham Forest, Gaga Slonina from KAS Eupen in Belgium, and Matt Turner at Nottingham Forest. Defenders, 8. Cameron Carter-Vickers from Celtic, Serginho Dest from PSV Eindhoven, Christopher Lund from Palermo, Tim Bream from Fulham, Chris Richards from Crystal Palace, Anthony Robinson from Fulham, Miles Robinson from Atlanta United for now, Joe Scally from Borussia Mönchengladbach. And midfielders, a couple of names that are interesting. There were 7 originally called in, 6 now. Paxton Aronson from Eintracht Frankfurt, Luca De La Torre from Celta Vigo, Leonard Maloney from Heidenheim, Weston McKennie from Juventus, Yunus Musa from AC Milan, Gio Reyna from Borussia Dortmund, and Malik Tillman. Sorry, that is 7. 8 was with Johnny Cardoso. So Johnny Cardoso coming out with an ankle injury over the weekend, which is sad. He's been playing really well for Internacional, but he will not be a part of this camp. And 5 forwards, Brendan Aronson from Union Berlin, Valerian Balogun from Monaco, Kevin Paredes from Wolfsburg, Ricardo Pepi from PSV Eindhoven, and Alex Zendejas from Club America. Okay, so 23 guys. Real quick, though, any snubs? That's been the question on Twitter, and I feel like there's a lot of names bantered about. Thomas, do you feel like anyone was truly snubbed from this roster?
Truly snubbed? No, I don't. I think you're getting to the point where you got your core relative group in here, and Gregg is going to, bring guys in that are performing well for him as well as club. And so center back is one of those positions where there's like, well, Austin Trusty. Look, I know he's playing the Premier League. I know, people want to see him. I think that's the thing with Trusty. People want to see him play. And I do too, I think. But personally, I mean, look, if you want to bring Trusty in, say goodbye to Tim Ream as far as I'm concerned, because look, he's done well for us. But if you think a 37, 38-year-old center back is going to start for the U.S. in the 2026 World Cup, you're crazy. Even next summer, I think you have to really consider if that makes sense for him to be on this roster from a growth perspective, right? At some point, you have to let him go, even though he's been doing has done well for you under Gregg Berhalter. So.
Yeah, Caleb, let's build on that center back conversation, because that does seem to be where the quote snub names are coming up. Obviously, we believe Miles Robinson is not only the greatest defender in the world, but the greatest defender in American soccer history. But we're biased. But take me through that. I mean, a little bit of bias. Look, we admit it. But look, you mentioned Austin Trusty. People also talk about Mark McKenzie.
Right.
The question is, to me, and maybe you can help me see this, is there a big difference between all these guys?
I mean, I don't see how there could be, right? If there was, we would see them in camp. Because I think for the most part, the last several rosters we've seen, there haven't been a ton of arguments. The coaching staff is kind of nailing it for the most part. For the rosters, Austin Trusty, Mark McKenzie, we talked about it. The thing about it is with Tim Ream, he's in to play, maybe not, but he's definitely in for leadership, right? And if Berhalter is thinking that within the roster, he has his pair in Chris Richards and Miles Robinson, then why would he bring in other guys to mess that up? If that makes sense. I think he has his mind made up. Not that he doesn't want to see competition. I think he's just seen enough of these guys, and I think he's going to go with a Miles and Richards pairing, and he's got Ream in there as leadership. That's me trying to make sense of it, because I'm with you. Thomas made a great point. He's not that old. Look, we're 2 days apart, so let's chill out on the 38. Okay, it's 36. All right, 36. But I mean, let's just be honest. It is getting up there, and if we're looking at 2026, where does he fit in the plans? So I'm with you. I would say it is definitely time to be rotating through there. So we'll see. Like I said, my thing is he's got him there for leadership, and he has his pair in mind.
And look, Cameron Carter-Vickers went to the World Cup, though I don't think it's any shock that he's here. I think we all know Chris Richards would have been at the World Cup had he not been hurt beforehand. I'm just of the opinion that I don't think that there's that big a difference between all of these guys. And I think that's ultimately a good thing. I think we have a lot of pretty good center backs. I don't think there's any one, to me anyway, that screams, oh, they're world class for sure. And so that kind of makes all of it a little jumbled. But I agree, Thomas, like Austin Trusty would be someone I like to see, and especially for maybe the next time we have an actual camp that we can bring in a larger roster, why not bring a couple, Trusty or one other in? But it does seem like he settled on Richards, Robinson, and CCV as the center back pairing or group, or if you will, for this cycle.
Yeah, I mean, continuity is huge when you talk about center backs. We've talked, it's one of the conversations that's gone on for, a long time. Who's your pair? How are they going to work together? And, I think fine for this, if he wants to use that, fine. You want to make sure you seal the deal and qualify Copa America. But I think it's, you have to transition. I think players do need that opportunity as well, though. So to defend the other side of it is like saying, hey, look at Zendejas. He's been playing well. He gets an opportunity because of injury, right? What's he going to do with this opportunity? Because he flubbed in the Gold Cup, right? And so now he's got another chance. Will he start? Will he play? Again, it's Trinidad and Tobago. So if you can't look good against them in an opportunity, then maybe it's done. But we don't have a lot of depth there either. As I don't think we have a huge amount of depth at center back either. I think we have some players, that we haven't heard from in a while that could still, probably do that. But that's that weird balance of, Gregg sticking with the same group for continuity purposes, but also maybe bringing in a player or two that, can maybe win them over. But that's maybe on the player to make sure that they're performing at a high level to get Gregg's attention to pull him into the roster.
Well, another one that I think you could argue was performing at a high level that got attention into this roster was Johnny Cardoso. And Caleb, it's really unfortunate he's not here, because with Tyler Adams not on the roster, I think it's safe to say Gregg would have tried Johnny for a significant amount of time in one of these two matches, if not both, especially because as much as I think Yunus Musa is a great player, it would be nice to find a true defensive mid option as a backup to Tyler Adams, not just, Yunus can play there. And to me, Trinidad, while they're a fairly okay team, are not a high level where you're super concerned that if Johnny doesn't get it right, we're somehow, several goals down. Not to talk too much on it, but this does suck for him that he's not in this camp.
Yeah, absolutely. I hate it for the kid. And I think it feels like it happens all the time. Anytime there's an opportunity where it's like, okay, Johnny's going to get some opportunities here, right? He's going to get some playing time here. And then boom, hamstring, ankle, something. I feel like it's always the ankle with him. But yeah, I hate it. And I get a lot of flack when I don't fawn all over him on Twitter. And it's not that I hate the kid. I want him to come in and show that he can do it. And everybody's like, he's doing it at a great level in Brazil. And all that's fantastic. I have seen too many guys ball out in club ball and then do nothing at the international level, and vice versa, right? I need to see it in the U.S. kit. And, really through no fault of his own, just circumstantial, he hasn't had the opportunity to show it. When he has had the opportunity, quote unquote, coming, he's been hurt. And it sucks. I really was looking forward to it because I do think he probably would have been the first choice to see what they can do. And now we're probably going to see, like you said, Yunus Musa, or might see a lot of Maloney.
I don't know if we'll see Maloney. I gotta be honest.
I hope not. I'm not in love with what I've seen. I'm just thinking of what we have there. What are we going to see? But I feel like these are games where Johnny could have really made a name for himself. And yeah, it's unfortunate. I hated to see that news.
Yeah. And Thomas, we talked a lot about in the last cycle, and some people use this as a strike against Gregg, mainly because he gave so much time to not good players. But we do want to see, you mentioned continuity. You do want to give guys opportunities, not just in camp, on the field. Johnny's not going to get it. It may be Leonard Maloney. I don't know if that's going to happen. My fear, and maybe this is completely misplaced, is that we'll see a lot of Yunus, and then Gregg will go, well, Yunus is the backup to Tyler Adams. And I just don't know if that's the best solution.
Yeah, so that's where this challenge becomes, we're putting these players in positions with the A and B group players, right? And seeing how they perform, because, Johnny hadn't performed well with the national team, kind of outside of that in limited opportunities. He looked good in the last window. I think I want to see more of it. So, but I want to see more of it with the A group in general, because that's the team we're going to be seeing
Right.
in general. And so Gregg's got to figure out how to balance that a little bit too. Like, I love the rosters, but he also has to think about, well, what's going to, he can't just wait for injuries to happen, in my opinion, to say, hey, I'm going to have to bring a guy in now because now it's an injury. So you've got to have that pool of whatever it is, 33, 40, whatever the number is of players that you can bring in and out and find out what the combinations are and how they work with one another. And I think that's kind of where Gregg, we still haven't seen that piece of it. He wants to, and no one's going to complain about it because you're really seeing what you want to see. But there are those, 7, 8 players that could easily just kind of be on the back of the bench there, as we talked earlier, that you're not going to be, oh, okay, we put Trusty for whoever else. You put, I don't know, I can't, whatever. You pull these other players, oh, Sargent's in for Pepe this time. You're going to be okay with it. So I think you have to figure out what those combinations are a little bit when you have those opportunities, because you don't have a lot of them.
Yeah, we'll see how he plays this out, because I think the underlying theme to this, as it is a lot of times these CONCACAF competitions, Trinidad is not great. We put a beat down on them in the Gold Cup this past summer. So the other thing is, would we learn much from anything from a player's good performance in these matches? But I think, as I mentioned with Johnny getting a chance here, there are other guys in this roster who I hope they get a good chunk of minutes, because they can get just inserted into the game in a slightly less at high stakes atmosphere. I mean, the stakes are we need to win, so that's good, right? We have to win, or at least not lose significantly if we, if that happens. But there are guys like Kevin Paredes who, right now, a lot of people are saying might be the third best winger on the depth chart. You have even still a guy like Alex Sendejas, who is new-ish to this group, who hasn't quite shown it on the U.S. national team level. Those are guys who, in my opinion, have a chance to really use this camp, use these 2 games as an opportunity to show Gregg that they are a guy he can use going forward. I'm wondering how much we actually see of them, though.
Yeah, I don't know. That'd be interesting to see. I mean, what his roster is going to be in terms of how formation is going to be set up. I mean, there's a lot of talk, about, Reina here, Reina there, putting in Tillman. It'll be interesting to see what he does with that, because I think, again, another opportunity to see, how it works. Personally, I think you try to move as little amount of players as possible. You know what I mean? Like, you have to kind of say, hey, look, this is your area. We want to see you playing centrally here, Reina, instead of moving him back to the wing. I'll be interested to see what he does. I don't think he'll do anything crazy. I think we'll see the 4-4-3 like we always do.
Caleb, when it comes to Gio Reyna, let's just talk about him now. Is this the perfect opportunity to fully commit to playing him as a 10, right? Or at least in that attacking midfielder-ish role? Or does it actually make more sense to put him as a winger nominally, but knowing that we're going to be in possession a hell of a lot during this period, this window, especially at home? Does it just make sense to put him out wide, but because he plays in that, we call them the half spaces, but that, secondary channel? And the other question then is, does it matter?
I think this is a great opportunity to continue to play him in that central position we've seen him in, because this can prove a lot, right? Because you're missing, let's just, in Christian Pulisic, you're missing arguably the best player on the team, right? And you're missing Weah, who has made a ton of things happen. So, number one, if you're having success and he's creating opportunities with quote unquote less talent on the field around him, then I think that speaks volumes to him playing in that central position, right? And then we've also talked about how when teams sit kind of in a lower block and get numbers behind the ball, we have a difficult time breaking them down. Okay, again, we're going to face that. So having him there will allow him to prove his worth, because I think he's probably the best suited player we have to create. His vision, his ability on the ball, his passing, the range of passing. I think it would be best suited to stick him there and see what happens. But he's that type of player, especially with the possession, like you talked about, the fact that we're going to have so much possession. He's the type of player that you can play him out wide and let him have a little bit more of a free roam kind of responsibility on the field. And you're going to get similar things, especially if you're playing him on the left side with an A-Rob who's going to be pushing that width, right? So, I mean, there's just so many things that you can do with him, which is one of the things that makes him great.
Yeah, and I feel like this discourse has gotten so misguided because, as you mentioned, Pulisic is out, Weah is out. So there's our best wingers. And arguably, at least in my opinion, two of the most four important players in the entire group, right? So, Thomas, I guess my question is, do you put your best player in what we think is his best position, or do you put your best player in a place on the field where he can still be super impactful to get also a pretty good player like Malik Tillman or Yunus Musa on the field, because you are still losing that creative talent in Pulisic and Weah?
That's a tough question. It's been a debate for a very long time that I've had in terms of, do you play, you have a quality player that you can play out of position and still play well, or do you play the quality player in a position that's his natural position and, and fill in the gaps around that? I don't know. I mean, I think I want to see Reyna more centrally. We haven't seen him a lot there. I think that distribution, I think he's good enough to get the ball where it needs to go and give whoever's playing the wings an opportunity to score, as well as if Balogun starts, give him that service that he needs. I as much as I want to see Tillman there, and maybe you do see him. That's what I'm saying. It's a very hard thing. So personally, I don't know. I think you keep him there. I want to see Tillman there as well, and I think he'll have his chance, but I think he'll be in as more as a sub.
Look, I'm a massive Tillman fan. I love what this kid does, but I feel like Reyna and Tillman are going to do a lot of similar things on the field, and might get in each other's way almost. Because I think they're both smart enough to, if they had been put in this situation multiple times, they could figure it out. But in one game, two games, you might see them stepping on each other's toes. Whereas, because of the absence of Pulisic and Weah, I've talked about it before, but Florian Balogun has played winger before, and Ricardo Pepi's a decent striker. I don't know if you don't put Balogun at left wing with Pepi as a striker and Paredes at right wing, then you've got these inverted wingers cutting in on their dominant feet. I mean, I guess that's the biggest thing. Like, we have options now,
yeah,
it's difficult to talk about because we've never had this before. Used to, it was like, well, Pulisic was out, it was doom and gloom from everybody, right? Like, what are we going to do? We're toast. We're not going to be able to do anything. And I think that just speaks volumes to the depth we have. And, the crazy thing is the depth is not even remotely close to world powers. We're just happy that we're too deep in every position, at least, But yeah, I want to see him central, and you plug in on the left and the right side with the absence of Pulisic and Weah. And if we're still dangerous and we're still creating opportunities and we're still scoring goals, then I think that really, really speaks to Gio Reyna's effectiveness in that 10th spot.
Yeah, and I think where I land on this is if you have to put Gio out wide because, and by wide, I still mean you're playing in, if you're thinking 5 channels across the front, he's playing in channel 2 or 4. It's not like he's playing on the touchline. That's where Jedi and Dust, he might be on the touchdown if Dust decides to underlap, which is fine because, hey, Dust will be fine. I'm just saying, when we say out wide, I don't mean his feet are on the touchline or on the, that's not what I'm talking about. But to your point, and as kind of what I hope kind of is the theme as we continue to progress toward Copa America next summer, is getting reps with the best players in the best position possible. But when Gregg was rehired and he had an introductory press conference, or one of the early press conferences, Thomas, he mentioned playing 3 in the back on occasion. Well, we're down our 2 best wingers. Right now, our wingers options are Zendejas and Paredes. Not fantastic options, if you ask me. Might we see a 3-back? Might we go like a 3-5-2 or something? I mean, do you think Gregg is bold enough to try it out?
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna try it out, this is the time to do it. I think. I mean, the thing is, this is where Gregg is not creative. This is where Gregg is not strong, in my opinion. Is making those tough choices. We may have the talent where we can do different things, but will he do that? Right? Will Gregg take the, this opportunity? While it's not a huge risk. I mean, I think you can try it, and if it doesn't work, you can still adjust and get the result you need to at home. Right? You have to do it at home. On the road, it's fine. You want to do what's comfortable. You want to do what's work. But at home, I think you've got to consider making some of those, formation changes. It doesn't have to be 3 backs, but and what does that look like? In general, I would say the roster doesn't suggest he's probably going to do that. But because if I thought I just don't think he'll do that. But it's definitely worth considering and trying in these sort of competitive matches where there is a result that's needed to advance to a higher tournament. So I just want to have Gregg's football intelligence is in his confidence in that it's going to allow him to do that in this moment.
I think, like you said, the roster, I don't know if it's set up for a 3-back, right? You've got 4 center backs. I feel like if you're going to do a 3 center back system, you're probably going to want to go 5. That doesn't mean, though, that if something happens that you couldn't bring, a Lund or a Robin, you come. I mean, it can happen. But I'm completely with you, Thomas. Does Gregg have the flexibility to, and I know he said it, but saying things and doing things are different. Does he have the flexibility to pull it off? I don't know. But I would say you're 100% correct in the fact that if it's going to happen, these are 2, same team, but 2 games where you would think he could at least try it.
We'll see. I agree with both of you. It's not. If I were the coach, I would say this is a good time to try it out because there's things that we could implement. We have our best players. We might as well try it out with our best group of guys, right? But when he said a 3-back, I was very skeptical because he tried it a couple times last cycle and we never really saw it in a consistent type of trial. I would like to see it just because it would be nice to have a plan B on occasion, but I'm not confident it'll happen. Let's talk a little bit more, though, about what this lineup could look like for that home game, But before that, let's real quick, just so we're on the same page. The home game is the most important. That game you have to win by a ton of goals so that we don't have the collective anxiety of having to play a match that has a result that matters in Trinidad and Tobago again. Right? We all agree that the first match we have to come out there, and I mean it's got to be like 27.
Have we had to play a match that mattered in Trinidad and Tobago? Has that ever happened in our history?
I don't recall much from the ones that they've said that we talked about.
Doesn't ring a bell.
89 maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, that one really close. But no, seriously, I mean, the first match is at home. We've had historically great success, not just in Austin, but against these lesser teams at home. Thomas, I mean, this has to be your absolute best foot forward, right?
Yeah, you've got to dominate. You've got to get as many goals as you can score in that match, and you just got to leave no doubt about it, right? Because not even with just Gregg, but Gregg has a terrible road record, and that's a culture thing. I don't understand why they can't change that mentality. They've been able to do it with Mexico, I think, on the road. They've done a lot of things to prepare to play in Mexico. Why is that the only focus? Why can't we look at that across the board and say, hey, why aren't we doing this for every other road opponent? What are the challenges that we're going to meet down there? Bad field conditions, temperatures, smog, whatever it is. Like, make those accommodations and say, look, we're going to go in there to win. We're not looking for a draw. We're looking for a win. And so that's the mentality that we haven't seen. And in this sort of format, you have a little bit more flexibility, obviously, with that than you do with qualifying for the World Cup, in the hex, and then in the last time around. So you have a little more room for error because it's a two-leg matches that you have. So.
Well, if we're assuming that this is the most important one, Caleb, what's your starting 11 then?
I think, I mean, with Pulisic and Weah missing, it really throws an wrench into things because we have Aronson, Paredes, and Zendejas that are the out and out wingers, right? It's a tough one because normally I would say the lineup kind of writes itself, but this makes it difficult, right? Like I said, because you do have options now. I don't even know if I want to give a prediction because, like we've talked about, do you see Reyna on the left with Tillman in the middle? Do you see? I know what I want to see. I have no idea what Gregg's going to do. I don't think anybody has any idea what Gregg's going to do. Gregg doesn't know what he's going to do. I hope that's not true. But if I'm going to go based on what I want to see, give me Matt Turner. I don't care that he's lost his position. We can talk about that all day long. He's still our number one. Give me A-Rob on the left, Richards and Miles in the middle, Dest on the right. Give me Wes, Musa, and Reyna in the middle. And then give me Balogun on the left, Pepe on the right, and give me Pepe in the middle, and give me Brendan Aronson on the right.
Interesting.
That's just because, I mean, Balogun's played the winger before, and he's technical, he's saucy, he's got the pace. So I don't know, when Pulisic and Weah are out, what do we do? This is what we got to find out. I just don't know. There's so many options.
Well, Thomas, you going with Balogun out wide and Pepe in the middle, or I mean, what's your lineup?
What I again, to Caleb's point, I have no idea what Gregg's going to do. It's a hard thing. I think, I think it's Turner, Dest, probably Richards. He'll go with Ream, which I don't probably want to go with, but then you'll have Aronson. Aronson, Jedi on the left with Musa McKinney and Reyna, and I would probably go with Aronson on the right, Balogun up top, and then probably Pereira on the left. Give him a chance. He's been playing well with his club right now.
My only concern with Paredes is he looked very shaky, nervous when he came on. In what was that?
Ghana, or was it
Ghana in October? Thank you. I had
Yeah.
to think about what month we were in.
He did. You're 100% right.
And he looked a little shaky right now. Maybe you play him at home against Trinidad. It's not the same. I don't know. I feel like the goal that Dest scored on the weekend makes me want to put Tillman on the right with Dest. Like that's what I'm at right now. And then Gio, Wes, and Musa in the middle. On the left side, I think you just start Aronson. Maybe you start Paredes, but I think Aronson will get the start. That's who Gregg likes, and he's effective. Let's just put it that way. He works hard. He'll create havoc in their defensive third, which they'll be in a lot. And so if you can kind of prevent them from even trying to build anything, I think that'll be help. And then obviously Balogun up top. I think the back four I would start personally. I would start Dest, Richards, Ream, and Jedi. And the reason I choose Ream is because I think, again, in this match, we're going to be having a lot of the ball. And Ream and Richards are by far the two best passing center backs. Now, that said, maybe you just have Richards there and you put like Miles back there as the one dude of, hey, your job is to make sure they don't get any counterattacks. But I think
that's why you have to, because we're going to be pushing and we're going to have a very high line, and you're going to want center backs that can recover. And, old man Winters is not as fleet of foot anymore, even though I love him. I love him to death.
Yeah.
But you might want to have a little bit more cover there, pace wise, with us pushing so high.
That's the only debate I have. And that's only because, again, I expect us to be in possession a lot. And I think if we can score a bunch of goals, that's the most important thing. But I agree. Maybe you just have Miles there as the safety valve. And obviously Turner's in goal. Look, he lost the starting job at Forest for the time being. He's still a very good goalkeeper. No one else in our player pool is anywhere close to his level of play. Matt Turner is the starting goalkeeper for the U.S. Now,
easy, number one.
It just is what it is. We don't need to have that conversation. I do just want to point out that Gaga is here and not with the U23 camp. That U23 camp was announced today. We're recording on Monday. Some names not in there, but again, it's a U23 camp. Clubs don't have to release players. Players don't have to go. It's never the first choice, and it won't be until the Olympics. And even then, it won't be a first choice because some clubs will say, no, you can't go. But that's important. We also had a U17 World Cup kickoff. They got a first group stage win against Korea, 3-1. They play again. Maybe this morning. I forget the time. The kickoff times are at 4 a.m. So I'm not waking up to watch those. I'm sorry, but keep on track of that. That's good to hear. Thomas, any other thoughts about this roster / U.S. soccer in general right now?
No, I think it's to your point, that there's some players on that U23 that are going to be playing over in Europe that are fringe players, that are younger that I think, worth keeping an eye on, like Reynolds, and he's one of them. I think Tessman and Busio are both called into that. So, and that's good. That's the way that has to be, right? You've got to have some of those young players sitting there, kind of waiting, doing their thing, and but yeah, this I think the roster is kind of what we were hoping and expecting based on the players available. So it will go out and dominate, and leave no doubt about it.
Also important to note that U23 squad is playing 2 friendlies in this window. One against Iraq, one against Morocco, both over in Spain. Caleb, any last thoughts on this roster / U.S. soccer as a whole right now?
I mean, you mentioned Gaga not with the U23s and he's with us. I'm wondering if that's, if that says that he's, with the senior team then, right? Because you would think there would be a great opportunity for him to go and take control with the 23s, but I would assume it's going to be Brady now with the 23s. And then, speaking of the 23s, speaking of youth national teams, I just got to give a little shout out to Berchimus. I've heard it all different ways. I don't know if anybody got to watch. The kid was absolutely phenomenal. So, I mean, exciting things as far as U.S. as a whole. And then, I don't know if anybody's shaking in their boots for these upcoming matches. I think everybody knows we should take care of business. We should do what we're supposed to do. But, we've said that before. So.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to watch them on replay. That's where I'm watching them. I'm not waking up at 7 a.m. or 4 that way. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me tonight. You can follow Thomas on Twitter at USKeeper. You can follow Caleb on Twitter at USMNT Corner. You can follow the show on Twitter at Soccer for Us Pod, and you can support the show at buymeacoffee.com/soccerforuspod. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm Bart. I'm out.